program overview of the Library District's P-Card program. We're going to talk about credit card reminders, discuss disputes, and then jump into the IntelliLink training portion. We'll talk about P-Card user responsibility and also important dates, and there will be time for some closing information. So in looking at the P-Card program, why do we use cards? That's really a great question. For the Library District, our procurement program centers mostly around our purchase orders through the e-requester system. That's our preferred method of purchasing. However, in very specific instances, there are opportunities for P-Card holders to use their purchasing cards to procure services and products for the Library District's business mission. As we move on to talk about strategy, strategy is very important.
So when you ask the question, what is a strategy, there are two different types of strategies on a card. The first set of strategy is something that is out of control of the district, and that is a fraud strategy. So that's what will create a card to approve or decline at the point of sale. So sometimes you think you're at the gas station or you're at a store and you go there all the time, and now all of a sudden your card's declining, but you know that your limit's available and those types of things. It's because your card is declining due to potential fraud. So Visa on a daily basis receives notifications of where skimming devices have been located and other fraud activity, and they monitor that very closely. And it may be that your card's declining so that you can call in and just make sure that you're the one who has the card, and then we can get that charge approved and you can go on your way. The other type of a strategy is a strategy designed by the Library District that tells us where your card can and cannot be used. So an example of that is that all of the SPIN codes on your cards are blocked, so you can't go ahead and use your card for bail bonds and liquor stores because they'll automatically decline. When we look at the strategies, those are set up by the district. If you did run into an issue with a card declining due to the strategy that is on your account, and it's the strategy that was designed by the district, you would be able to go ahead and make that change to the strategy by calling over to your administration team, and the administration team will then go ahead and actually get that changed for you live time so that you can get that transaction posted through. For any questions about strategies, please reach out to the finance department.
And so why are we changing is a good question. Right now we are transitioning over to the IntelliLink spend management system in order to harness its paperless capabilities. Prior to now, the Pueblo Library District has been mostly moving paper receipts and paper reconciliations through the process onto paying the monthly credit card statement. At this point, we would like to move to the IntelliLink system in order to take advantage of the electronic capabilities, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this training session. But the advantages of moving to a paperless system are definitely efficiency, the ability to save time and effort in terms of administering our purchase card program, and actually giving the P-Card user much more time to work with their receipts and their paperwork and documentation that is required. Now, one of the things that are involved in our P-Card user system is our guidelines. You will be given, or have already probably been given, a procurement card program user guideline document. In this document, there's a number of information items that are going to be important for you to understand. The roles for the program as determined by the finance office are there. There are various people who will take care of P-Card requests, ordering new cards, increasing card limits, canceling or inactivating cards, folks to help you to approve accounts, look at cardholder documents, maintain passwords and resets and various things, and then, of course, approving supervisors. Your supervisor will be involved in approving your purchase card transaction information at the end of each statement period. Within the user guidelines, there's important information in there about how to activate your card, safeguarding your card to make sure that there's no unauthorized use, making sure that you understand what authorized use includes, the fact that itemized receipts are required for all purchases. If you have to make any changes to active cards, there's some information in those guidelines to help you proceed with those activities. If you have to replace an active card because you've lost it, or if there's any kind of issues with fraud or transactions that you would like to dispute, all of the detail regarding how to process through these activities are contained in the user guidelines. Definitely contact a pCard administrator with any of your questions, and those administrators include the Chief Financial Officer and the Senior Accountant of the Pueblo City County Library District. And the final requirement for the user guidelines is to sign a procurement card participant agreement. This document is found at the last page of the guidelines, and it requires you to sign as a pCard holder stating that you understand the guidelines, you plan to follow those guidelines, and that you understand itemized receipts are required, and your proper use of the system is a part of your responsibility. So let's talk about credit card dues.
Okay, so with the credit card dues, one of the things you want to know is the acceptable use of your credit card. So please make sure you're reading those policies and asking any questions if you need clarification. You will want to keep all documentation, including your itemized receipts, relevant to each purchase, and retention of all receipts is required for 180 days in the event you have a return or a refund is required for one of your transactions. Upload all applicable receipts for the previous month to Visa and Intelilink by the 5th business day after the statement is available. Please keep up with changes to the credit card policy and procedures. On the next slide, we're going to cover the credit card don'ts. So don't put anything on a credit card that should be put on a purchase order using eRequester. Don't respond to any suspicious emails or phone calls with your card or personal information. If you're questioning it, it's most likely fraudulent. At the bank, we do see quite often a lot of fraudulent information. There is a message on the front screen of Intelilink telling you not to give personal information. Any of your banking relationships should never be asking for passwords or information that we do not already have in our system. If there is ever a doubt, reach out to the number that you have on the back of your card, not the number you're being provided, or reach out to your administrative team for advice. Don't turn in summarized receipts. Receipts must have the detail of the purchase. For an example, with a restaurant receipt, if you had a restaurant that you had gone to eat at, you would need the itemized receipt uploaded, and in addition to that, you would need the receipt that would document the tip that you had paid. So you would have 2 receipts for the one transaction. Don't use the credit card for expenses related to family or friends accompanying you on business travel or to purchase food or alcohol or any other restricted items. If you are at a restaurant and you wanted to have alcohol with your dinner, you can ask for that to be put on a separate bill. Same with any friends or family who are accompanying you to that dinner. They can be placed on a separate receipt. And now on the next slide, we're going to start looking at card disputes and lost or stolen cards. So lost and stolen cards, when that happens, you're going to just want to go ahead and call into the operations team and have that taken care of. You can call over to the finance team, and they will also get that card ordered for you as well. If it's the middle of the night, the number 1-800-VISA-911 will help you with any of those emergency type requests. You should file a dispute for anything that is an error on your account within 60 days of the billing. It is a federal requirement that we have that information disputed within the first 60 days. An example of that is if you had purchased something and maybe you were overbilled, or you had returned it and you've already talked to the vendor and the vendor has not issued credit right away, dispute that with the bank. That is part of what you have a card with us for, is the benefit of us taking care of those transactions for you so that you don't have to keep going back and forth to that vendor, and we can mediate the circumstances on your behalf. Once you dispute a transaction, you would have a temporary credit that would be issued to the account. If the vendor then gave you a credit, the temporary credit would be removed, or it would end up being a permanent credit, and those dispute information would go back and forth for you. In the event that you had a fraudulent charge on your card and you had that dispute in, you would place that dispute form in the receipt documentation, since you would not have a receipt for that credit or that debit. And we will move on from the card disputes to the next slide, and we're going to start talking about how to log into IntelliLink. So there are login instructions on this page that tell you the URL that's listed here. Everyone's username is going to be your email address at the district, and your temporary password is welcome1. It will be case sensitive, and you will be prompted to change the first time that you log in. Please take note that there is a forgot password on the bottom of the screen next to the login. You will be able to have 2 attempts to log into the system before you would be locked out. So on the 3rd attempt, you would be locked out of the system. So if you try twice, you can do forgot password, and it will send you a temporary email to your email address immediately so that you can get into the system. On the next slide, we're going to take a look at the memorable word portion of this. So you log in, and you have 3 levels of authentication: a username and a password and a memorable word. Your memorable word is going to ask you for a question. So you would click on the drop-down, and it might be, what is your favorite pet's name? And you would typically choose your pet's name. I do caution you to be very careful when you're selecting your memorable word, because every time you log in, after you put in your password, it's going to ask you for the special characters of the first 5 letters of your memorable word. So in this example on the screen on the bottom right, it shows character 1, 2, and 4. So if your word was baseball, it's going to be asking you for character 1, which is a B, 2, which is an A, and E for character 4. You can get around this by selecting all of the same letter for your question. So you could put all X's in instead of saying baseball. And then you would just put all X's in the system if you choose to do that, and it's too difficult to remember the memorable word for this. The memorable word will be going away from the system in the May-June timeframe, and you will have a new URL as we're making some changes for mobile capabilities in the near future. With that being said, we're going to move to the next slide. And the next slide covers our Visa agreement. So on the screen, you have to accept or decline the terms of the use of the website. We do recommend that you read the terms of use and hit accept on that. If you do not accept the terms of use, then do not hit decline. You will need to contact your administrative support team for further discussion around why you would like to hit the decline button. Due to the fact that if you decline this, they will have to set up a new user ID and password for you, and you will not be able to log into the system. On the next slide, is going to have your current password. So you're going to go through the first setup, username, password, selecting a question for your memorable word, accepting or declining the terms of use, and then you're going to change your password immediately from the welcome one to a new password. The new password, again, will be case sensitive. You must have at least one uppercase and one lowercase. The instructions are on here for what is required. The password does change every 90 days. So it will allow you to change the number. So, for example, if you had something on there, you would turn around and you would change the number maybe from a 1 in January to a 2 when you had to redo that in March. So it will let you change just the number as we go through this. Now that we've reviewed the password information, we're going to move on to the next slide, and that is a little bit more information around the password. This is information that tells you not only is it expiring every 90 days, but you can change this as you need to. So you can click on your name on the right-hand side of the screen, and it has password and memorable word there. You are able to change those as needed. If you do have to change your memorable word, it will require a password reset as well. So be cautious about changing that, as you will have to make the change to the password. Again, you can click on that Forgot Password on the front page after 2 attempts, and it will send you an email that will let you have a new password immediately to get back into the system. The welcome screen will have your name on the top right of that for you to select in the drop-down. On the next slide, we're going to look at the home screen. So what you're seeing now is a snapshot of what is contained on the home screen. So at the top, you can see we have Home Expenses Report, and then your name would be on the right-hand side. You will have My Actions column, where you can pin items that you want to pin to the main page, and then you will have the middle that has your expenses, and on the right is any announcements from the bank or from the library district. So in the middle portion here, when we're looking at My Expenses, it says Action Required, and you have recent periods. So there's a lot of different ways to do the same thing. You could click on the 12 that's under Action Required, or you could go to Recent Periods and click on that, or you could click on Card Expenses on the left, or you could go up to the Expenses and click the drop-down. You will notice there's a red dot next to Expenses. That red dot will always show on your screen if you have expenses that have not been coded. On the next slide, we're going to look a little bit deeper at the expenses. If you click on the expenses, then you're going to have your statements that will highlight. Areas with item that require your attention will always have the red dot next to them, so that you know exactly which ones you need to process. So in this example, this cardholder has not done their expenses for 4 months. They've got outstanding transactions. Since you are supposed to be doing this monthly, you should only have one monthly period that has outstanding items on it. On the next slide, we're going to talk about changing your account view within the system. There is an item called Quick Coding within the IntelliLink system. Quick Coding is not automatically enabled. It is a feature that you will want to add in here. So when you're looking at the bottom of the screen here, it says Quick Coding, and it shows narrative details with your GL code next to it. This allows you to select more than one transaction and code them all the same. So, for example, if you had 4 Staples transactions and the same month, and they all needed to go to the same GL code, you could click on those 4 and put the coding in at the top and hit Save, and it would automatically code all of those. If you do not enable the quick coding, you will not have this top box on your screen to code more than one thing at a time. On the next slide, what we're going to demonstrate is where to find that. So you're going to click on your name on the right. And after you click on your name on the right, you're going to click on Customized Views, because this screen is going to come up. So on the left, you'll click on the Customized Views button. On the next slide, we're going to show you where to go from the Customized Views. And once you click on that, this is what's going to show for you. So with this showing here, you would click on the quick coding down at the bottom. It's right above the general settings in bold. You will click on that, and then you will hit the Save button. So moving on to the next slide, we will talk about reconciling your expenses. So make sure you go in and add that quick coding so that when you do reconcile, you can reconcile multiple at the same time. In the screen, this is what it would look like without the quick coding at the top. So you have a lot of things here that are green and red. The system is very intuitive, and green means good, red means bad. So when you see a green check, it means everything has been coded properly. A red X indicates that you need to finish coding your transaction. So in the example that you're seeing here, the first Newegg transaction is coded and waiting for approval, and the other transactions have not been coded. So as we move on to the next slide, what we're going to do is we're going into the coding. So if we were to click on that red X, it's going to take you into a coding screen. You will be able to select your codes here and your description field and all of these other items on here. What you will do in the beginning is you will click the drop down and highlight the search, and then another screen will appear. So as we look at the next screen, when you go into the search, you can either type in a value or a description, or just even hit the search button. The codes that are available for you will turn on at that point in time, and you'll be able to see them. Not everyone has access to all codes. You should have access to only the codes that pertain to yourself. If you do see that any codes are missing, please reach out to your administrative support team, and they will be able to add some of those codes for you in real time. When you have your codes here, you are able to select 15 favorites. If you are wanting to code something right now, you would just click on the up button, and it would put that code into that field that we had seen on the other page. So if we go to the next slide, in the example that we would hit the up button, it would now have coded that GL code information that we see up there. You also have a narrative details, which is a description of the purchase. So this is something you will have to fill in for every single transaction. It's the information that you are putting on the paper today. So whatever you're listing out there today, whether it was a restaurant and who attended and what the purpose of it was, that's exactly what you're going to put in these narrative field today. And then you do have a receipt button on here as well that you would be able to click on, which will take you into the receipt imaging that we will look at more in just a few moments. Now, once you have coded this and added the narrative detail and you've hit save on the bottom, it is going to give you that green check mark, and then you're going to be able to move on to the next transaction. With that, we're going to move on to the next slide, which is going to talk about how we can split transactions. So on your slide, there's a little plus sign next to line 1. When you click on that, this is going to open up a little dialog box, as you can see here on the left, that is a split transaction line. So you would be able to select how many lines you want your split to be, and it will automatically do an equal split for you. You can change that out, as it will give you the balance there on the bottom. Once you hit save, it will let you then go in and code those multiple lines. You can also freeform it with the 4 lines available if you did not want to go in and do the split transaction line. The split transaction line with the plus sign allows you to do 10 splits. You can do 4 right here on the main page. If you need more than the 10, you can hit the More button underneath line 4. You can do up to 99 splits in the system per transaction. So you think about, you have one transaction, maybe it's for a hotel and it's being billed to 2 different cost centers. You would put in the cost center for the hotel and then the cost center that the tax would go to, or a meal that might have been on there. Those things you would split out on these transactions here. And then you would have the same narrative detail for all of those. So on the next slide, we're going to look at the tax paid. So the tax code for you is just going to come up as saying NA. You will have to select that NA every single time before you are able to hit the Save button. So with the next slide, this is what a transaction will look like after it has been coded and approved. So in the top example for that Newegg, you have the green check mark, which means you've coded it, and you have a green check mark next to that, which means the manager has approved the transaction. In the example below it, you have a red exclamation point. That red exclamation point means the manager has not approved the transaction as of yet, so it is pending approval. If you have a question mark instead of an exclamation point, that means that your manager has sent you back something through the tool. So your manager, when they go in to approve it, might have had some questions about your narrative detail or something with the transaction. When they change that to a question in there and ask the question, you will automatically receive an email from the vSend Intelligink system that tells you you have something out here that your manager is questioning. So when you would come in, you would see the red question mark. You would click on that. You would answer their question and then hit submit. And they would automatically receive an email instantly that tells them you have responded. So do not respond outside of the system. Respond within the system so that everything can go through for the approval. On the next slide, we're going to take a look at the statement periods again. So as we mentioned previously, there is a red dot next to those statement periods. If you have anything that requires attention, then you would have the red dot. So, for example, the statement period from 9:30, if the manager had sent back a question mark and everything had been coded, you would have a red dot next to this because that's where your question is at. So you will always, again, look for anything red in the system because anything red means you have work that needs to be done. On the next slide, we're going to take a look at the approval screen. So as you can see here, it does show you the cardholder comments and the approver comments. So when your manager sends you back a comment under approver comments, you would come into the red question mark. It'll take you immediately to the screen. You'll see their comments, and you'll be able to add your comments and hit save. If you had gone back and forth with your manager multiple times, there is a history button on the right that you would be able to click on, and it will keep that history of your comments back and forth between each other. In addition, if you had something you had coded on the coding screen, you would be able to click on approval and put comments here if you had something more you wanted to say to your manager that did not need to be in the narrative details. So you could add that comment here and hit save, and that will take that over to the manager as well. So you would have those comments in advance. On the next slide, what we're going to take a look at is fraudulent charges. Fraudulent charges will happen. So you need to report fraud to your finance team immediately and follow procedures outlined in the pCard guidelines. You are responsible for all activity on your card. Finance will assist you in coding the fraudulent charges and fraudulent credits correctly. On the next slide, we're going to look at how to manage your receipts in the tool and how to upload those images. So on the bottom of your transactions, you can see a Manage Receipt Images link. You would select the account statements that you're viewing first, and then you would click on Manage Receipt Images. On the next slide, once you look at Managing Receipt Images, it's going to take you to your image library. So your pop-up screen is going to appear, and at the top you have blue highlighted right now of linked images, and then you have your image library on the right. So if you have images that auto-linked in the system, they will be under your linked images, obviously. So when you think of, like, you go to a Panera Bread, if you took a picture of that receipt and emailed it into the tool immediately, then what may happen is it would link up with that Panera transaction, and it would be linked. If you were at a restaurant that had a tip on it, and you took a picture of those receipts, because you would need both of them, they're not going to auto-link because it's not linking the dollar amount. So you would need to click on your image library because they will be waiting there. On the next slide, what we're going to do is if you were to click on the upload button, maybe you don't have a receipt that's in here and you need it to be in here, you click on upload, it's going to take you immediately to your document and your path within your computer. So if you've scanned that document and it's in your computer, you would be able to select that file and hit save, and then it will automatically be listed in here. As we move on to the next page, we're going to take a little bit of a look at how these receipts look. So you have that pop-up window on here, and the pop-up window will appear with your unique email address when you click on Upload via Email. So this email address is listed here via Upload via Email, and it's also listed in the beginning where we were looking at those settings for the customized views. So you would be able to see it in either place. We do recommend that you actually take this email address and save it into your phone or into your computer, because it's very long and there's a lot of numbers and everything in there, and this is selected to just you. So every one of your transactions should only be sent to this email address or uploaded via the upload button from your computer. Once you have that image in here, you would be able to go in and upload more. One thing I do want to caution you on is if you are doing the email, do not do it the last day. If you've waited till the last bit of time you have to get your expenses reported, it can take up to 4 hours for that transaction to show in the system. So you will want to just upload it and scan it if you're waiting till the last day. If you're doing your transactions as you go, you would just take that picture right now and email it in, and then when you go to the tool and you're ready to do your expenses, it's going to be sitting here waiting for you. We do recommend that you kind of upload your receipts and code as you go, because you can log into the system as often as you want. My personal recommendation is I do mine on Fridays every single week, just to make it a little bit easier for myself. And you're going to have to do what's going to work for you, whether it's waiting till the last day or doing it weekly or going in a couple times a week. But we definitely don't want you to do the upload email if it is the last day that you have to turn it in. In that case, you need to actually do the upload and have scan that image. Now, on the next slide that we're going to take a look at, we're going to talk about the receipt imaging a little bit in more detail on how to assign transactions. So if you have an image in here, by selecting the items presented in the account statement, the paperclip icon, where we were doing the coding earlier, that identifies any transactions with a receipt. So that means it would link it to this. So if you clicked on that receipt, it's going to take you here. If you click on that bottom, where the image that we were talking about just a few moments ago, it's going to take you in here. Now you can link it on here, you can unlink it, or you can delete it from the tool. So if you had it in here and you had it in here twice, maybe you need to delete it, you can click on it and it will give you some more options on the bottom to either unlink it if it was linked to something incorrectly or to link it to something else. You can also link the image to multiple transactions. So for the case of Amazon, you have 4 transactions and 1 receipt. You do not need to upload the receipt 4 times. You would just go in and click on this and do Manage Receipt Links, and it'll bring you up the ability to manage all 4 of those transactions to 1 receipt. As we move on to the next slide, we're back here at the receipt imaging. So we're under your coding right now, and when you're looking at the coding, it says receipt, and you can see the paperclip. Since it is highlighted green, it means there is an image that is linked to this, and next to that is a green check mark. If you had a lost documentation form that you needed to have submitted because you had lost the receipt, you would click on this and upload that lost documentation, and you would change the green check mark to a red X. And you would do that by clicking on that empty box next to the green check mark, and that will notify the finance team and your manager that this is a lost receipt document. Moving on to the next slide, we're going to look at important dates. So important dates on this is your statement closing date. The first day of each month is when your statements close. So all cardholders need to upload receipts and code transactions within 5 business days following the statement closing date. Managers and approvers need to review and approve transactions within 8 business days following the statement closing date. The finance department then will reconcile and extract all of the data on the 10th of each month or the closest business day in order to upload that into the library's ERP system. On the next slide, we're going to take a look at any questions that we hear from our cardholders. And one of the things that we hear on this is that why do you have to have everything in by the 5th? And when something is due by the 5th of the month, it is a hard stop, or the 5th business day, because if you're not having those transactions coded in time, then your manager only has 3 days to get that in. So your manager has to get that done by the 8th, and when they have to get that done, because on the 10th, when the district has to upload that document in there and they will close out the statement periods, you're no longer able to go in and code any of those transactions in the system. So it is very important that you make these dates. If you know you're going to be out of town or you're going to be on FMLA or something has happened, you can notify your manager or the finance team, and they can delegate someone to your account to manage those transactions for you on your behalf, since you would not be able to do them that time. So you would not ever want to give your passwords to anyone to log into the system. We can assign delegates that would have their own passwords to assist you on your behalf. If you do have any other questions, you would want to take that to the finance team, and they will be able to answer any and all of your questions. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sherry.
So this concludes our training for the Pueblo City County Library District Procurement Card User Program. Keep in mind that as you think about questions or come across any challenges, the first place to consult is the user guidelines. So that's the document that you will find on the portal for the district. You can also reach out to the finance office. Each member of the finance team is standing by to help you to make sure that your P-card use is successful and that you're following all library district program policies, and you have all of the resources that you need to be a successful purchaser for the library district. We wish you a great day, and we hope that this P-card program change will be very successful and will help you get your job done. Thank you so much, and we wish you well.